Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Bloom the Podcast. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode. If you guys are new here, I'm your host, Donovan, and I'm here with the one and only co-host, Ashley.
What's up?
Too much. How is everybody doing today? I hope you all are well. All the internet users, I hope you all are good. If you guys are wondering, we didn't have an episode last week. I was actually a guest on our older sister's podcast, the Aaliyah Matheson Show. So if you guys didn't see that, make sure you guys go check that out. We talked about homeschooling, our experiences with homeschooling, the pros and cons of homeschooling, and kind of our general thoughts of homeschool versus public school. So make sure you guys go check that out. I'm going to leave the link to that in the bio or in the description. So you guys can go check out that. That's why we didn't have an episode last week. She was actually using our studio. So we were nice enough to lend her the Bloom studio for the week as she was in town. But we're back this week. We're back on track, doing our thing. And we've got a fun episode for you guys today. So I hope you all enjoy this one.
Back with a banger.
Yes, back with a banger. And before we get into another banger episode of Bloom the Podcast, I want to give a huge shout out to Bamboo Earth. As you guys may know from our previous episodes, they sent us some really awesome ethical skincare products. And if you know me, I'm all about all natural, clean, friendly health stuff. So these products are super awesome. They're all super clean, minimal ingredients. They feel great on your skin, and they get the job done. So they were nice enough to send us, different stuff like face masks, toners, cleansers, moisturizers, all this really fun stuff. So if you guys haven't checked out Bamboo Earth yet, we will leave a link in the description where you guys can go to their website and get you guys your own products. So make sure you guys go do that. I'll be tagging their Instagram below as well, so make sure you guys go give them a follow. But jumping right in to the Bloom moment of the week. On this segment, we talk about how the Lord is growing us and things that we've been learning in this past week. I think a lot of times we look at growth as like this big, grand scale. And you can be learning things every day. I mean, I know I learn stuff every day. So we want to make sure we capture all of the growth in our own lives just in a week-to-week basis. So I'll start with you. What was your Bloom moment of the week?
So, I have been reading a book by an author I've already mentioned on here 1,000 times, so just because I love her book. Okay. But I was reading her book, and it was really interesting because she brought up a way that I can study the Bible, and that is, she calls it a fat folder. Interesting. A fat folder. And basically you take 3 things that either like you struggle with or just something you want to learn about, like whether it's anger or love or whatever it is. And basically you do research on all of those subjects. Like you study it hard, whether you're listening to a podcast on that subject, you search the Bible and like mark your Bible with like highlighter that's a certain color for that specific subject and like all this stuff. Basically you're like head on deep into studying this specific subject, and then you fill the folder with all the information that you have on that specific topic, so that way you become an expert on that topic. So I thought that was super useful, and I'm just starting that. I started doing it yesterday actually. I just think it's really cool because I was kind of like, man, like I really want to study, and like I wasn't sure where to go, and then I read that and I was like, dude, like, this is actually awesome. Like, I know that once I start studying it, like my sin issues or struggles like that deeply, then that'll be really helpful to like constantly have those things like memorized in my mind because I've been studying it. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's great. I think that can be really useful. I mean, I think a lot of times with stuff that's scripture related, once you start really getting involved with one aspect of scripture, it starts to trickle into other areas of your life as a whole. It's kind of like the fruits of the spirit. Once you start really studying gentleness or kindness, it's kind of like a domino effect, and all these areas just start getting better for you. So that's really cool. I might have to try that out. For me, I would say, and I've kind of mentioned this before, but kind of on a different note, prayer is one of the things that I was kind of trying to do more of this year. And we've been studying prayer in our Bible study on Wednesday nights at church. And it's been super awesome just going through biblical prayers and watching how Bible characters speak and interact with the Lord. And it's kind of shown me to just be not having much belief in the Lord answering my own prayers. If you look at the prayers in the Bible, everyone is so, they really, really believe the Lord can answer their prayer, and they speak to the Lord with that belief, and you can hear it. They have so much conviction and passion in their prayers. I think a lot of times when I pray, it's kind of just like, oh Lord, and
you out there?
Yeah, could you grant me this wish? Almost you're treating him like a genie, kind of.
Yeah.
And you say it, and you have a request, but do you really believe that he has the power to answer that prayer? And I think just for me, just really focusing on my faith in the Lord and praying with the faith that I should have in him, because he is the one who can do all things and answer all prayers. And just having that conviction and passion that the people in the Bible had when speaking to the Lord. So that's been a big thing for me recently.
That's good. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah. So there you guys have it. Bloom Moment of the Week. Hope you guys all enjoyed that. If you guys want to let us know how you guys have been growing as well, feel free to drop it in the comments, message one of us directly. We would love to hear from all you bloomers out there how the Lord is growing you guys on a week-to-week basis.
Definitely.
But now the time has come. So we got a fun episode today, guys. I hope you guys are ready for this. So this stems from a couple different places. What we're going to be talking, and I guess because I wanted to talk about this for a while, and then I saw what you did, and I was like, no better time like the present. Right. If you guys don't follow Ashley on Instagram, make sure you guys do that. She's been posting a lot of awesome stuff, blog posts and threads that are super informative and helpful. We're going to be talking about one of the threads that she posted recently. And we're also going to be starting from another vantage point as well, so that way we can kind of meet in the middle and crush this once and for all. So, and this topic is, I guess I'll pose a question to you, and we'll talk about our experiences first, personal experiences and what we believe. Can guys and girls be best friends? Platonically.
Okay. I was like, well, yeah.
Yeah. Can they be best friends platonically?
No.
All right. Thank you guys so much for watching. No, I'm kidding. Okay. No.
Right.
Why would you say that?
Because whether you might feel like it's a platonic relationship.
Okay.
But there's really no such thing as being that close with the opposite sex without one of you catching feelings. And that's just, we are human, and our tendencies when we get close to someone, when we confide in somebody, when we spend all our time with that person, your natural reflex is to develop a care and a like and feelings for that person, even if there's not an initial attraction. Those are my beliefs.
Yeah.
That's just cut and dry for me.
I would say the exact same thing. I would say anytime you're around another person of the opposite sex all the time, and there's constant contact with that person, whether you found them attractive or not initially, something is bound to come of that. I think one thing to know as well, and I'm speaking as a guy here, I'm just going to be straight up honest with you guys, because that's what this conversation lacks, is honesty. For guys, more often than not, unless they are like, don't find you attractive in any way, shape, or form, and this is even an outlier, because this can still happen as well, but most of the time, if they even find you decently attractive,
there's a chance.
And you talk to them on a regular basis. Sorry guys, but there's intentionality there with each friendship. And I think that's what people underestimate, is the intentionality that people have within friendships. So a lot of times people think like, oh, we're just, we're in the same social circles and we're friends. And it's like, that's not true. It's not true. I think sometimes it can be true, but more often than not, people have motive. And like I said, for guys, and for girls, it's usually the same way as well. If they find you any inkling attractive, there is motive there for hanging out. Right.
And attraction grows when you like someone's character. And the odds of you having a best friend whose character you don't like is very rare. So with that, you are probably going to form some level of attraction to that person, whether it's like, I just love this person, like they're just like so awesome. I just love this about them, you know, like just start there.
Start here. How about this? What is the natural course of action for someone you do like?
What do you mean?
It's like when you like someone, what do you want to do? You want to talk to them, right? You want to text them. You want to call them. You want to FaceTime them. You want to hang out with them. So if you're doing all those same things that you would do with someone that you want to date,
right,
but you're calling them your best friend instead, I think it's a little bit deceitful on your own behalf to say, oh, this person's just my best friend.
Right.
You're doing all the things you would do with someone who you would date or want to date.
You're forming an attachment to somebody.
You're forming the kind of dating attachment with someone that you're going to call your best friend.
Right.
And that right there, I think, is not wise, especially if you're going to go out onto the limb and say, I don't like this person at all. Because that's what a lot of times it's a brother to it's this it's
and like
that.
I said, you might feel like it's the most platonic relationship on the planet, but what's your best friend thinking? Like, do you really know what your best friend is thinking? People don't have to act to think a certain way. So unless you can read minds,
right,
then we have an issue.
People look at life through their own perception of what they perceive to be true. If I don't like you, I'm going to perceive that you feel the same way.
Yeah.
And that's just how you project. Kind of like when you like somebody and you start seeing
everything is a sign.
Yeah, everything's like, oh, they looked at me for 3 seconds. Like we crossed paths and our shoulders touched. Like once you start doing that, it's the same thing on the reverse. If you don't like someone, but you enjoy their company, blah, blah, blah. You're
just pretend you don't see it.
You're going to project the same way. You're going to think this person does not like me. Right. It's that confirmation bias that your brain does subconsciously on its own. And you don't have to do anything to make that happen. That just happened. That's how it works.
Right. And I think there's also this, which kind of will be probably brought up later in conversation. But I think this goes with this point. As a girl, and I'm speaking for girls, but I'm pretty sure I can speak for guys on this too. But
probably
everyone wants attention from the opposite sex.
Yes.
You don't even have to like them to want their attention. You're just like, oh, like I like that this guy's paying attention to me. So like, even when you have a guy best friend, like you're wanting that attention. Yeah. And it's not like, oh, I want our best friendship attention. It's like, no, I want a guy's attention. And that's kind of always how it's going to be. It's like when you're dating someone and you break up. It's like, yeah, I'm over that guy, but I just wish I had a guy to talk to. You know?
This makes me think, and this is this is not even, I mean, this is related, but it's just made me think of this because I think it's hilarious because it's so true. There is this trend going around on TikTok where these girls would be with their boyfriend and they would call their guy best friend. The girl would call their guy best friend and tell him that her and her boyfriend broke up and see what they say. And every time the guy best friend would be like, oh, do you want to go out? Or like, do you want to go get coffee? Or like making a move on her.
Oh yeah.
And they're always so shocked. And I'm like, really? Really? That's the default answer. Like it's just, I think we play so dumb all the time about this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And like I said, because we look through our perception and we maybe want things to be true that aren't, but that's just how this goes. That's how that works. So when people say that it can be completely platonic, maybe it can for you, maybe not for the other person, or maybe the other way around. Maybe it is for the other person, but not for you.
And it's not to say that there hasn't been one single relationship out there where the people didn't like each other, but that is not a normal thing. So the amount of people who say that that's the case, that can't be the case. Right.
And also there's another variable to this as well. Just because the person isn't actively liking you doesn't mean if you made a move on them, they wouldn't like you.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Everyone's an option at that point.
Right. Because people just are under the assumption like, oh, even if I asked them, I'd be like, no way. Like, I would hate to ruin the friendship.
Yeah, no.
Guys.
If you're best friends with someone, why wouldn't you want to go on a date with them? Like, your goal in life should be to date and marry your best friend. So if you have a guy best friend, why wouldn't you want to date them?
Yeah, that's the most dangerous place. Or if you're really trying to get with someone, that's the best place for you to be, is the friend zone, to be honest. Because you're that person they're coming to all the time with whatever their concerns. Like, if a girl or a guy is coming to you about their boyfriend or about their girlfriend, that's over.
Right.
That's over. Like, you can't have that. You can't have that kind of confidentiality, that kind of intimate relationship with someone of the opposite sex, especially if you're dating.
Which
like,
enters the topic. Yeah. And that, like, you're inviting someone into your relationship.
Right.
Without knowing if they have good intentions or not.
Right. Yeah. Before we get there, though.
Right.
Your experience as a girl having guy friends growing up, what was that like?
Well, let's be honest here. I don't think I had a close, like really, really close guy friend that I didn't like, or that I at least didn't think, oh, if he liked me, like, maybe I'd like him too type thing. Yeah. Like, it's always been like that. Like, yeah. I don't know if this is just a subconscious thing, but yeah. I've never been like not attracted to the person I'm close to that's a guy.
That's how it works.
Yeah, you don't make friends with people you're not. I don't know if that's how that works, but
that's how it works.
Yeah, there's never been somewhere I'm like, they're definitely not an option. Like, they are not cute at all. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So with that, that's my experience. I've definitely been always like, okay, this person is potentially an option, like, because we're close. And right. I trust this person, and I tell them stuff, and I've grown an attachment to this person because I'm trusting them, and I'm telling them these things.
Right. So with having guy friends, and with that being said, do you feel like people treated you differently, or were like, kind of like, oh, well, we're just friends or something? Or were you kind of just waiting, like, if they made a move, they made a move. If not, like, or whatever?
I mean, like, are you saying, did I initially, like, go for it?
Yeah, like, did you ever make it known, like, that you were okay with something more than friendship, and they were kind of like, oh, well, no, you're like a sister to me?
Okay, so that's actually funny, because I did do that at one point with someone. I did initiate something, and they didn't say that exact thing, like, you're like a sister to me. They basically told me that I was on standby.
Ooh.
And later on, when I moved on, and we were still friends, they came back later, and there was obviously some feelings there, but I was already gone with the wind. Yeah. So
he put you on layaway.
Right.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I would say similar situations for me. I mean, I don't have a layaway situation, but I mean, I think as a guy, especially because as a guy, you're usually the one that's initiating those advances, if you will, for the most part. But yeah, if I don't go out of my way, and because I know this is the law, like, guys, I don't make the rules, I just abide by the rules. The rules are, if you're texting somebody every day, contacting someone every day, trying to make plans with this person all the time, you like that person. Like, I'm not gonna go out of my way to do all that and then curve them by saying, oh, I don't want to ruin our friendship, you're like a sister to me. That doesn't make sense. I'm not doing I don't even text my best friend that much. Me and Jason hardly ever text. Like, right. Well, and when we text, it's like, hey, bro, you want to play video games? We're like, sure. And then that's it.
Right.
Like, the people that I'm closest to, I usually don't text all the time. So when I'm going out of my way and I'm texting you, or, like, you know, it's not because I'm trying to be your friend. You know what I mean?
That's actually so funny. I just thought of kind of a perfect example too, and especially of lying about it at the same time. So I don't know why I didn't think of this first when you asked me that question, but there was someone who I was best friends with, texting all the time, hanging out, going to the mall together, whatever. Yeah. And it was so funny because people would be like, oh, you guys are like really cute together to us. And we'd be like, haha, like, that's so never. Whatever. Yeah, exactly. Right. And then I was like, I knew how I felt at that time, but I was still going along like, oh yeah, that's just like, wow, you know? Yeah. But then I told this person that I liked them, and he was like, oh, I like you too, but I never thought you'd like me, so I didn't say anything type thing. But this entire time, we were both playing coy, you know, like, it was stupid. Like, there was no point in that. And that was the obvious thing.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too. Like, I've never had a friend that was a girl that I've been that close with that I didn't like.
Yeah, because what's the point?
And, like, I've never even had that kind of situation where, like, none of us said anything. Like, I feel like I'm a pretty forward person for the most part. Like, if I'm really close with you and, like, I really enjoy your fellowship or your like companionship, I want to make that known, so that way we both don't sit there and play that game where, where
Exactly.
it's like, we both never said anything. We liked each other for 5 years. What?
Exactly.
Like, I've just never been in that situation. So I can't even really speak to that, because anytime I've like really enjoyed someone's company and it is a girl, I know the intentionality that is there because it's a girl.
Right.
So I feel like it is my responsibility to make that known and to communicate clearly how I feel about that.
Definitely.
So I think that's a big thing on both ends. I don't think it's healthy for people to be harboring these hidden feelings with their quote unquote best friends and then, not ever expressing that or communicating that.
Right. And I think people, it's so funny because people will be like, oh, well, like we've both dated other people and like we've watched each other and it's fine. I'm like, that means nothing. The example I just gave, I actually hooked that friend up with one of my friends while I like that person literally means nothing. Yeah. Like it just doesn't work that way. I mean, dating, you're not like married when you're dating. So even if your best friend is dating someone else, deep down you're like, well, I could still have a chance. Like if that person breaks up, I'm gonna swoop in. You know what I'm saying? Like,
and that's why I said the friend zone is the most advantageous place you could be, because you already have all that connection. They're already cool with you. They already trust you. More likely
they're going to you about their relationship with someone else, and you can be like, I just don't think it's gonna work out.
No one should be treating you like that. You deserve so much better.
Me.
How dare they treat you that way? I would never do that to you.
That's so true.
But we're best friends, so it doesn't matter.
It's so true. That is actually, I've heard that one so many times.
Like, people really be saying that, Chuck, and it's like, okay, so what are you going to do about it?
Exactly.
Like, make a move then.
And you know what? That kind of this is another thing that happens is you end up comparing that person you're dating to your best friend. They don't fit the mold that, like, my best friend like really treats me like this. Like, how come you're not doing exactly what they're doing?
I wish I could find a guy like you.
Exactly.
Oh, I think I know a guy.
Like, he's actually available right now.
It's so I don't even know, like, it's like watching an episode of The Twilight Zone. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It
doesn't.
And it gets really dangerous, and this is one of the things that your thread was about.
Right.
Kind of getting into that arena is the idea of respect and how those relationships do have to change, even if you want to say that you have them, which, if I'm being honest, I don't believe. But if you're going to go out and say that you have those relationships and then join another relationship join a committed relationship with a guy or a girl, those relationships have to change.
Right.
So, referencing to you and your post, what do you have to say about that, and how should those relationships change?
I think there needs to be clear boundaries. And one of the big points I brought up in my recent thread was going out alone with your best friend. Mm-hmm. I want to know why anyone would need to do that. What's the purpose? What's the motive?
What do you gain?
Yeah, what are you gaining? Why do you have to be alone with that person? And I kind of just like want to know, like, that's why I posted, like, I got so many different views on it. Like, people are like, oh, well, they should be okay. Like, whoever you're dating should trust you enough to let you go out with that person. But I'm like, but why do you need to do that?
Right.
I need to know.
Right.
If someone can tell me, I need to know.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. I think, the going standard is like, that whole trust idea. Mm-hmm. I think people can get a little bit carried away with it because, in one sense, yes, you don't want to be like a controlling person.
Right.
You don't want to be like a boss micromanaging them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But there's also this level of kind of common sense that would tell me to say, if I'm dating a girl, what need do I have to go out to get coffee with another girl without my girl present?
Right.
What there's the amount of things that could go wrong versus the amount of things that can go right the ratio is way unbalanced. It's way unbalanced. It's hard for me to even imagine one thing that could go right with me doing that. It's not a good look for my testimony in my relationship. It sends a terrible message to how my relationship is even going as a whole, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're like, oh, I saw your boyfriend out with another chick. Are you guys still together?
Yeah. And I think a lot of times people don't think about it from the other person's perspective, because it's a very selfish thing to do, in my opinion. If you're going to go out and say that your partner needs to just trust you and you can be friends with whoever the heck you want and they can't care, that's selfishness. Because you're if it was the other way around, and for these guys and girls that they're just saying, oh yeah, I'm okay, totally okay with my boyfriend or girlfriend going out with guys and girls by themselves. I don't care. I trust them. That would tell me that they don't really care that much. Which to me, it's like, okay, then what are we doing then? If you don't care at all that I'm going out with another girl alone without you, and you're just, that either tells me that you're talking to somebody else too, or that you really don't care.
Well, I think also another thing is, when you do that, you're basically showing that you don't respect your own relationship. So you're letting other people come in and disrespect your relationship because you're not even respecting your relationship. You know, like you're basically like, yeah, my relationship is open for you to come in and basically be involved in it.
Yeah.
And so also I think another thing is with the whole trust thing, bro, like not just, you can't 100% trust yourself.
Right.
Let alone somebody else. Like, obviously you want to date someone that you feel like you can trust in general, right? You don't want to date someone who has some record and you know that they're a liar or whatever the case may be. Yeah. But we are all sinners and we're going to make mistakes. So when I say I trust my partner, that means I'm trusting them not to put themselves in a position where they're being tempted.
Where they're going to be forced to trust themselves.
Exactly. Like, I don't want, like, trust is the position also you put yourself in. Not just like, oh, I trust that when you're in this awful situation that you'll control yourself, but more like, I trust that you won't put yourself there to begin with.
Right.
And I think that that's something like people don't think about. They just think like, oh, well, when they put themselves in a tempting position, hopefully I can trust them.
Yeah. If we could trust ourselves, who sins?
Exactly.
Who would be sinning right now?
Exactly.
The whole point of, Jesus coming to die for us is because we can't do anything on our own.
Right.
We have no power over the flesh. We're a slave to the flesh. So for us to just say, oh yeah, I can trust that. It's like, no, you can't.
Right. And you might think that you can trust yourself. But what is the other person you're meeting with? What are their intentions? Are they trustworthy? Because you know what? You could be the purest dude ever, no thoughts whatsoever, just chilling. That girl makes a move on you because she doesn't have good intentions, then you're still going to be to blame because you were put there.
I mean, yeah, look at and this is something Dad always talks about. Look at the men in the Bible. Look at them. Some of the most godly men to ever walk this earth. David, a man after God's own heart. What did he? I trust myself. No, you don't. Do you? I mean, it's the amount of stories in the Bible of men that have fallen to these to those sins.
Right.
And it's not a game. This is, I trust myself. You can't. I mean, it's just a dangerous game you're playing when you tell yourself that you can and you put yourself out there. And more often than not, there are negative repercussions that come from that.
Right. And they're like, well, just control yourself. Like, because you can't control yourself, like I've heard those comments too.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. Like, this isn't about controlling yourself. This is about you putting yourself in a position and disrespecting your partner and basically disrespecting your entire relationship. Like, people are just kind of picking up on like one or two things, like, oh, trust your partner or control. But it's a way bigger picture than that.
One of the other big things about this whole trust idea is, to me, it displays a lack of commitment. Because I think a lot of times, especially when you're dating, people act like because you're not married, that there are all these grounds for other things to happen because you're not married. And to me, I think that's a very not good way of looking at your relationships.
That's exactly how your best friend is going to see it too, who you're not dating.
Right. who you will be in a couple months. Right. Like, I think people treat relationships so flimsily because there's not a ring there yet, and they don't put themselves in the situation where they're actively trying to, pursue marriage.
Right.
And it shows when you go out and you kind of act that way and treat it very cavalier like it doesn't matter because you're not married. So I think it's also people keeping their options open because maybe they want a relationship, but they're not sold with the one that they're in. Or, there's so many things that come into play. And it's just, you have to be so careful. And people have to be examining themselves constantly. And I'm preaching to both of us as well, because we also have to be you just have to be honest. And because with the presupposition that we should all have as Christians, that we cannot trust our own flesh and our own heart, that needs to make us all the more conscious of why we do what we do and the motive behind it. We just have to be very conscious and putting it through a biblical filter of, is this going to bring glory to the Lord? Am I doing this for X, Y, or Z reasons? Is this the flesh, or is this something that's going to be good?
Right. And guys, when you are dating, stop keeping your options open. You're either committed to that person, you're in the relationship until either you get married or it ends, or you're not committed at all and you shouldn't be dating them. And that's kind of what brings me to this also, is that if you cannot give up hanging out with your best friend who's a guy out of respect for your relationship, then maybe you're just not content with the person you're with if you cannot let go of somebody else who should not be there.
Sounds like you need to make a move on that individual.
Exactly. Because, I mean, what are we talking about here? Like, why is it, you need to ask yourself why it's so important that that person be in the midst of your relationship with someone else.
Yeah. And not to steer it back to trust, because I do want to keep going with what you're just saying, but with that being said, I think also it's dangerous because when you're in a relationship, how is the person supposed to trust you when you are when you can feel like the options are still open? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
If a person is that reluctant to give up their best friend, and it's like, oh, well, you can't tell me who I can and can't hang out with, like, blah, 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 this is my best friend. It's kind of like, what are we doing then? That doesn't breed trust. That doesn't create or generate trust. So it's going to be that much harder to get there if an individual cannot and refuses to stop hanging out one-on-one and having such constant contact with someone of the opposite sex.
Right. And I think this is also another thing on the trust issue, but I had someone in the comments saying like, oh, maybe you've just never had like a good trustworthy guy best friend then, if like you can't trust them to not like you, basically is what it seemed like. And here's my thing. You're sitting here giving them all the perks of being a boyfriend. You're texting them, confiding in them, loving them in your own way, and they're supposed to not like you. That doesn't make that person a bad best friend for catching feelings, because that is 100% normal.
Right.
Like, it's kind of your fault at that point if that person's catching feelings while you're dating someone else, because you're treating them with the same amount of attention that you're treating your boyfriend.
Right.
So why wouldn't they like you?
Yeah, what is the benefit of being your boyfriend or girlfriend at that point if their best friend gets the same treatment as you do?
Right.
And they're the same sex. Like,
right.
I don't understand. There has to be a shift in priority, in time management, and just the way you treat that relationship as a whole. You can still be friends with that person, but there shouldn't be the same level of intimacy and confiding in that person as you do with your boyfriend.
Right.
Or
and
girlfriend.
I just think this too. If this person is your best friend and they have your best intentions in mind, they have no ill motives, and they truly, really just think of you as a friend, then you'll be able to see that for the way they respect you and your partner as well. They will respect your partner. They will try and be friends with that partner. Close friends, might I add.
Yeah.
Like, you will be able to tell when someone makes no effort to be your boyfriend's friend or whatever, and they're just going for you.
Yeah, they're like, oh, we were friends first. Well, it's
Exactly.
Like, all right.
Yeah, like keeping the relationship separate. It's like, oh man, like, and that's why you have to keep asking yourself, why do they want to meet up alone? Like, ask yourself those questions, because if they respect you and your partner, they'll be like, hey dude, let's all hang out together, let's all do this, you know, like, like there should be no reason why that person wants to be alone with you.
Yeah.
And I just think there will be a clear respect that you'll be able to see, and you'll know they have your best intention.
Here's one. And this is one that I think about quite often, especially when it comes to this conversation. Especially in the Christian community, there are lots of stipulations and guidelines that people have with you two being alone because you're dating.
Right.
What changes when you go out with another guy alone, or another guy or girl alone? What changes then?
Because they think you don't have feelings, so there's no temptation there.
That's a lie.
Yeah.
Because if you really want to go out that bad, something's there. So why I don't understand the shift in, because that's exactly what you'd be doing with a boyfriend. So if you can do kind of what you were saying, all these things that you're going to do with a boyfriend and girlfriend,
right?
What changes? Because people need to keep their energy the same when it comes to the way that they view the purity and staying safe and all the chaperone, all this other stuff that people throw into the mix of dating.
Right.
Why is it suddenly a-okay to just go out on a limb out alone with a guy or a girl? You know, why is that all of a sudden okay?
Right.
I don't understand it.
Yeah, I don't either. And like, I just feel like I kind of said before, you're showing that person that you're really not that serious about the person you're with, and you're making them have some false hope there that there's a chance that they can swoop in. And I think that that's another thing too, is there are people get so like, oh, this person's dissing me or whatever because, you know, they don't want to hang out with me alone, or like, how do I know like what the boundaries are, you know? And like, I totally get that. I think some people go about putting boundaries in a way that can be rude sometimes, you know, like just like, get out of my life. I never want to see you again, right? But I do think that there's an unsaid boundary. If someone and their partner isn't talking to you as much, they haven't asked to hang out, there's your boundary for you. They don't want to have that relationship they had with you while they're dating someone else. Yeah. And I think you just have to respect that. And yeah, you might wish that they tell you their boundary or tell you what you can and can't do, but ultimately you just have to go with the flow, because if you don't, it really just makes you look more like you're disrespecting their relationship, or like you want into their relationship for some odd reason. Like, it won't look like you have good intentions. You know what I'm saying?
There's supposed to be a natural how should
explicit?
I say? No, exclusivity. Sorry, guys, grammar's not my thing. Exclusivity when you get into a relationship that I feel like is common knowledge to the outside. Right. Like, once you get into a relationship, there should be everyone knows, okay, this person are exclusive now, therefore they're going to treat the rest of us differently. Exactly. I don't understand why people feel like that's not supposed to happen. Right. That's supposed to happen. Right. That's how that works. Because you are trying to engage in that person's relationship for marriage, and the only way to do that is to dedicate more time, more effort, and more just everything more for that one person. One person, because a marriage is between one woman and one man. So when people get so shocked, and it's like that Pikachu meme, and like, it's like, I don't understand why that happens. Right. Because we know how you get to marriage. There's only one way to get there, and that's to put all your time and energy into this one person that you want to marry. That person needs to be your best friend. Yeah. They should be. And so with that, it's the same for even your girlfriends. Like, I'm sure you should probably confide more in your partner than your girlfriend even. It doesn't even matter if it's a girl or a guy. Like, your ultimate goal should be to have the ultimate relationship with your partner over everybody. If your intent is to marry them, if you're serious with them. And that's not to say that you can't get input from outside sources, because obviously you need to have people that are outside of you that can give you objective opinions on your relationship. Right. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it should come between you and your partner that you are exclusive with, when it comes to making decisions and really confiding in people, when it comes to those big decisions and just whatever it is, it should be between you and that individual at the end of the day. Not let me go confide in my best guy friend or my best girlfriend. Like, what is, no,
so there's actually a comment I wanted to bring up too, because this kind of goes along with that. But this person said, I pick my friends very carefully in honest conversations with them when I notice everything is different or off. I rely on these people to keep me in check. I don't know. It's just my experience that when you push people aside and you rely entirely on one person, there's a lot of room for toxicity and unhealthy codependency. I'm not saying this is the case for everyone, and if that isn't the case for any of you, I'm super happy. So with that comment, I kind of want to just say, though, that when you get married, it is just going to be you and that guy. You are going to be dependent on that guy and the Lord. Like, there's not going to be a guy friend on the sidelines that you're dependent on, right? So when you're dating, if you're dating for the purpose of marriage,
which is the only way to date if you're a Christian. So if you're a Christian and you don't have that mindset, don't date.
Exactly. If you're dating with the mindset you should be dating with, then you shouldn't feel like you can't be dependent on that person you're with.
And I would say it's more or less not even being, because that word dependent, I feel like has a very negative connotation,
especially now with feminism.
Right, because at the end of the day, you're not dependent on that person. You're dependent on the Lord. So regardless of who you're depending on, whether that's your guy or girl best friend or your significant other, at the end of the day, you shouldn't be depending on them for anything. Everything and all things that you need, you're dependent on from the Lord. The Lord gives you these people for you to confide in and for you to have those people to rely on. You are not dependent on them. It is the blessing of a relationship. That is what it is for. So in regards to that comment, I would say you shouldn't be dependent on your husband or wife, and you shouldn't be dependent on your girl or guy best friend. It doesn't matter. You're dependent on the Lord.
And I think that person would probably say that, you shouldn't be dependent on anyone, but I think it's basically just toxic to be basically just putting everything into one person and kicking everyone to the sidelines.
One flesh.
Exactly. You become one flesh with this person when you get married. And so when you're dating, it shouldn't be like, well, I need other people in my life because this is toxic. If it's toxic, putting all your effort and your 100% into one person, then you shouldn't be with them.
Right.
So I think
that makes perfect sense. It's difficult because, you want to be able to set boundaries. And in my experience, whenever I've dated people, I make it very obvious that I'm not entertaining anything else. I'm cordial and I am nice to people I am friends with, and I am still friends with those people. But they know, because of the way that I interact with them, exactly what they can and can't get away with. And that's how it's supposed to be. There needs to be a clear line that says you don't cross this. And sometimes you have to say it, sometimes you don't.
Sometimes you have to say it because people just won't stop crossing it.
Right. And I think a lot of people end up crossing it because they view relationships with a perspective that isn't accurate. And that goes back to what I was saying about people viewing dating because you're not married as a lesser interaction.
What happens when you're dating can very well continue into marriage, which is also in my thread. What do you think you're going to do with that best friend when you get married? What are you going to do with them?
Yeah, because marriage isn't this snap of the fingers, everything changes all at once. That's not how this works.
Yeah, you have to cut them off at some point. So you're either going to do it now or later. So why wouldn't you do it now so your relationship can be healthy?
Anything you don't address only gets worse as time goes on. So if you don't address those relationships in the beginning and say, this is how this is going to be because I'm with this individual, you're only making it harder for yourself by prolonging that. You're going to make it harder for you, your significant other, and that friend of yours that is going to be feeling dissed because you're not telling them what needs to be said and how things need to be going forward.
Right. And I think people just forget that you can cheat emotionally. Like, you can cheat in your mind. Like, there are so many ways that you can really cheat on someone. You don't have to have sex with someone to really be in a bad place,
I would constitute going out alone.
Yeah, that kind of seems like cheating a little bit. Me. But I think that even like think of it this way. You're in a relationship with a guy and then you go to a party and they're all guys there and you're the only girl. And what are you thinking? Like, oh, I'm going to get all the attention because I'm a girl. And I don't have no interest in these guys. I love my man. But like, yeah, it's kind of nice getting all this attention from the boys. That's still basically cheating on the guy because your mind isn't in the right place.
There's no honesty in this conversation. You know what I mean? When people are talking about this, because guy or girl, you want attention.
Right. That's
you want
just
attention,
normal.
whether you're in a relationship or not. Why do you think people are always talking about how, oh, this person hit on me, oh, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Like, people love attention, especially from the opposite sex. So
right.
to sit here and play around like, oh, not me, like, no.
And that's why it gets so dangerous having a best friend of the opposite sex. Because what happens when your boyfriend isn't giving you enough attention and then you run to your best friend for that attention instead?
When you're giving your boyfriend or girlfriend the silent treatment for the day because they made you upset.
Exactly. But don't worry because you have your best friend to keep you busy. Like, there's just...
Yeah, it's just...
doesn't work.
It's not healthy.
Right.
It's not how it's supposed to be. And I think, and obviously everyone needs to, do for them what they're going to do. Like, you can't live your life with someone else.
It's not a flat out sin issue that we can necessarily say, but it is something that's definitely unwise. It's a bad testimony, like you said, in my opinion. And you might be like, oh, well, me and my boyfriend agreed that this is okay. But even if you agreed on that, this isn't just about you. You have to think about the person you could possibly be leading on. Your testimony in front of other believers. Is this wise? Is this God honoring? That's an even better question.
Yes.
Is God honored by this?
And with the whole leading on thing too, from the presupposition that guys and girls will eventually form feelings for each other, which I feel like the majority of us should be able to agree on that. With that being said, if you're going out one-on-one with a guy and being that close with a guy or a girl, you are willingly either leading this person on because you have no feelings for them from your perspective, right? Because you don't like them, but they'll eventually like you. So you're willingly doing that. Or the other side of that coin is you're willingly going out with someone that you have feelings for. Those are the only two options. So when you say that, with that presupposition, like I said, that the guys or girls are eventually going to form feelings for each other, that's dangerous if you're in a relationship. Very dangerous.
Right.
Especially if it's the latter option.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Are you putting yourself in a bad position? That's definitely a huge thing. And I just think that you need to... For all the people out there who are like, oh, I'm getting dissed by my best friend because his girlfriend or boyfriend doesn't like me. Sure, that might be the case sometimes and you're not even doing anything wrong, right? Someone just might hate you for some weird reason.
It happens.
But you have to think about how you look when you're trying to hang out with someone alone or when you're texting someone. Like, think about how you look to that person. I'm speaking from my own personal experience. This person or these people may not even have bad intentions, but from what I've seen, I don't trust them.
Right.
Because they're not giving me any reason why I should trust them when they are doing these things. And I'm not even when they're doing these things with my partner and I'm not involved in it. And you know what? I trust my partner enough to not get involved with those things.
Right.
That's the trust I have.
Yeah. And because ultimately, and this is something I always say, at the end of the day, it is on the individual to not engage in any kind of thing that will constitute as cheating or whatever.
Exactly.
No one can come, if I'm dating someone, if I don't allow the activity to transpire, there's nothing a girl can do to me that would make me cheat, in that way. Right. Now, that can't be said for the other person. And you just have, you have to be so careful.
Yeah, because like I said, someone goes for a kiss with you because you decide to meet up alone and you had no intention. I'm still going to blame you because why were you there?
Right. And that's why I say it kind of falls back on the individual. Right. Even if you didn't initiate it, you still participated in even engaging with this person.
Exactly.
And
false
on any
hopes.
Form. Yeah, it's... You got to just think who is benefiting from this and how are you going to, especially if you're believers, because these are brothers and sisters in Christ. So are you causing another brother and sister in Christ to not only sin against you in your relationship, but to have, temptations and stumbling blocks about, it's just, there's so many things that can be said for negative implication on this. Like,
there's too much risk for you to think that it's like just something you should do, like
right.
I hope that you all are sitting there thinking about all the things that could go wrong, because there's a really long list.
Right. So, and that brings me to another question that I had as well, or not really a question, but more or less an observation, because I think in a lot of this conversation that we've been having, we've mainly geared it towards like the really external of like going out one-on-one.
Right.
Which, as we've discussed, is kind of a dangerous barrier.
Right.
But there's a lot more minute or smaller things that are just as inappropriate as like going out to coffee or doing those things, such as phone calls, FaceTime, text. With technology, you are allowed to allow people so much more access into your life than before. Even social media.
Right.
With Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and all this stuff, where people can constantly be in contact with you. And I think that's just as dangerous. What would you say?
I definitely think that's dangerous. I think especially texting.
Oh yeah.
And I someone actually did bring this up on the thread actually, in the comments. They're like, if you can't trust your guy with his phone or whatever. And I think, okay, you should be able to trust someone with their phone, right?
Right.
The person you're dating. But I would say trusting that person with their phone would be hoping that they're not texting another girl.
Right.
And how does once again, how does that look to other people? Oh, who you texting? Kimmy. That's not your girlfriend. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, you really do have to think about all those
it's
things.
old Becky from down the block. Yeah. You're like, what? Yeah, because
exactly.
That's why I said from the beginning, people don't often look at things from the other standpoint. Because if you're that girl or guy, and then you hear your partner's phone blowing up, and you're like, oh, who is that? And they're like, oh, it's
not you.
Oh, it's Joe Schmo. You're like,
yeah.
Really? What are you guys talking? Like, what
are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
I took that right from you.
Right? Yeah, that's what I was. What are you talking about? What do you have to talk about all day, all night with someone that you're not dating? What are you talking about? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. And I think
they're just building their connection. Ooh.
Yeah. And that kind of goes back to just the weakness of man, because on the onset, we just look at that like, oh, it's just a text, like, stop overreacting, blah, blah, blah. But it's so much more than that. And it just kind of shows how weak we are to even just the simplest of things. Like, there is no reason why we have to do that, yet we make it so important, to be in contact with all these people and constantly being giving them access to us, even when we're in an exclusive relationship. And I think, we just need to be very careful, because those friendships, even if they may have started out platonic and stuff like that, with that much contact, it's 99.99999% that it's not still that way.
Right.
So even with social, because you're so much more carefree with people that you think are not interested in. So even in the way that people communicate with you over text, and the things that they think they can get away with saying to you
or doing
is it's so inappropriate.
Right. And that's kind of something I was actually going to say, is even when you think it's platonic and say the guy thinks it's platonic, you guys can still be inappropriate and flirt with each other, and that's still just as bad. Like, doing that while you're in a relationship with someone else, because they're my best friend. Oh, I can lay on next to him and hug him all tight and sit on his lap. Like, no. You can't sit on your best friend's lap. You're with someone. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, and like the things that you're able to say, like, oh, you're beautiful, or oh, you're handsome, blah, blah, blah. All that stuff.
Oh, hey, babe.
Yeah.
No.
It's just all so carefree and all so willy-nilly, and it's like, okay, no.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, please, no.
You end up letting yourself out of check because, oh, they're my best friend.
And society tries to normalize this with movies and media, where that's always how it is. Right. The girl and the guy have this best friend that they've known since however.
Unless your best friend is gay, I don't want to hear anything about it.
Even still, that's not okay.
Yeah,
and
even
first
still.
Off, if you're a Christian, why would your best friend be?
I was gonna say that, but I feel like that's just basically saying that you shouldn't.
Sorry, I thought you were actually making a point there. I was like, really, we're going there now. That's a little off the deep end.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, it's just boundaries.
Right.
Boundaries. So in that regard, I would ask you, how do you set boundaries? Because there has to be a balance. You don't want to be this stone cold killer that as soon as you get into a relationship, you're just like, well, death to everyone that I knew before.
Exactly.
You know?
I don't care about any of you.
Right.
Yeah.
Now there's, severity to relationships, and, you have to be careful with how hard you cut someone off and how, much you don't, and it lets it affect you. So in setting good boundaries, what are some good principles that you can lay out to really make sure that you're able to really prioritize your relationship while still keeping in contact and making sure you're cordial, friendly, and kind to the people that you've been friends with for X amount of years or whatever?
Right. So I think just the basics is like, y'all can hang out in groups. Like, no one ever said there can't be a hangout and y'all both are there. Like, oh no, they're here, I'm gonna leave now. We used to have a friendship or something. Like, that's not how it is. Like, it's totally fine to hang out like that, like in a group setting, and keep those friendships. And I think like, even like, I mean, I guess it depends on if that person's single or dating, but I know even for like Nikki, like he had a friend and she's dating someone else, and me and her will hang out on our own time, even though like she made that effort to be close to me, just like she was close to him. And now they don't hang out alone. She hangs out with me, but we'll go on double dates if we all want to hang out together. You know what I'm saying? Like it just works like that. Like, you don't have to diss a friendship completely. If you're really friends like that and you're respecting each other, you're not going to think of it as like, oh, this person's blowing me off, but more like, hey, like, that's totally reasonable. Like, yeah, we'll see each other when we see each other, and I'll know we'll still be friends. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's the basic. And it's not like you have to delete this contact from your phone or something like that.
So when they text you, you're like, who's this?
Exactly. Like, I mean, you can like, hey, did you hear this here? You have an invite to this, updates, whatever. But it's not like, oh, hey, what you doing? Like, want to check, like it's not like that. It just, everything just changes. And I feel like it happens more naturally when the other person that you're friends with is respecting you. Like it all just kind of flows into place. You know what I'm saying? Like you know deep down in your heart what's pushing it a little bit, And that was actually kind of a point I wanted to bring up. Was I feel like I've brought up this point a couple of times, but one of my guy friends that I had when I was dating someone else, me and him weren't as close, obviously, when I started dating someone. And so we didn't talk very much. We didn't really hang out. And then after we broke up, I was like, we went back to being friends. And he was like, you know what? I didn't expect you to hang out with me. Like, you're dating a different dude. Like,
yeah,
I'm giving you your space while you date that dude, and it should be like that. Like, we should all have understanding if we really care for each other in each other's relationships because we have their best interests in our minds, then it should all just flow automatically, no hard feelings like that.
Right. Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. And I think one thing to keep in mind when you're making boundaries, think about what you wouldn't want your partner to do.
Yeah. What gets you a little jealous?
And then kind of implement that into how you set up your boundaries for yourself. Because if you're not going to be okay with your partner hanging out with all these different girlfriends that he has and blah, 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 then put yourself in their shoes and respect them and do the same. I believe that you shouldn't be asking anyone to do anything that you're not going to do yourself. So if I'm going to be in a relationship and I'm going to be telling my girlfriend, oh, you can't hang out with guys, you can't do this, and then I'm out here hanging out with girls 24/7, texting girls, I'm a hypocrite and I'm a terrible leader at that point. And that's what we don't want. So putting yourself in the position of your partner's shoes first is a good way to kind of establish what boundaries you both can agree on. Also, talking about those boundaries with your significant other, because I think a lot of times one of the big reasons why relationships fail is because both people go into the relationship with expectations on how they want that to go, but they never communicated those expectations to the person that they're dating. So when it doesn't meet the expectation, there's anger, there's resentment, there's bitterness. So get everything out onto the table on how you perceive it to go and how you can come to a compromise together to make that work the best for you both.
If you can't respect a boundary together, then what does marriage look like for you in the
Right.
future? No, I'm still going to go out to coffee with her. And you're like, but we're married. I don't want you to do that. You know, like,
Right.
that's not how that works.
Right. You have to start troubleshooting those issues together while you're dating. So that way, when you are married, you know how to talk to your partner. You know how to communicate in a way that you guys are going to be able to understand each other and come to a resolve where you both are okay with it.
Right. And for that girl who is feeling a little jealous because her man's is out to coffee with another woman, do not suppress those feelings or think that you're being clingy or that you're just not like, you're not being fair. You're not letting him have his freedom. Like, you need to speak up about
Have
that
his
because
freedom. That's
that's a whole
woo, that's a whole nother episode we could dive into, because
Exactly.
that right there is a big one. Like, oh, well, I just give my guy or girl his space because, you know, I'm not trying to be overbearing. It's like, well, when you're living with that person and waking up next to that person, I hope you aren't overbearing then, because you know what?
Caring about people these days is overbearing, apparently.
Yeah, it's such a weird mindset. You're like, well, I need this guy time, or I can't be with my. What do you mean?
Oh,
like,
man.
do you want to marry your
bros? We are doing
bros?
a podcast on that because I am so tired of hearing that.
Now, obviously,
I need that.
yeah,
I need that.
I make time for the people that I care about, like my best friends and stuff, like Jason and stuff.
Right.
But it's not like I'm gonna be like dissing my girl. Like, no, it's guy time.
You're gone for a whole weekend. Like, we're just gonna go play COD.
Yeah, it's like if I wanted to marry Jason, then you know what? We got another issue.
Exactly.
And that's where it all comes back to the mindset of when you're dating. If you are dating and you have that mindset where like, I can't be overbearing, like you're not in the right frame of mind
Y'all
to
need to
really
figure
be
that out.
intentionally dating.
Yeah.
Because it's a serious thing. And I think, and that's the big problem, especially with the young people, is it's not a serious thing for them. It's just
No one's intentionally dating.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
It's just a social status thing, a social media thing. It's the thing to keep you busy, to keep you popular, to make you not feel like a loner. It's all these other aspects that make people want to be in these relationships rather than the intentionality that's really there and the purpose of the relationship. Focus on the purpose, and all these other trivial, meaningless things like having opposite sex best friends flies out the window.
Is it so hard to find a best friend that's the same sex as you?
That's
Is
the other
it
thing.
really so hard?
Why is it so difficult for people to have a best guy friend or a best girlfriend? Why is that so challenging? And
Because
I never
girls are more drama.
No, that's a lie. You are a girl, so like
Like, there aren't other girls like you out in the world.
and that especially doesn't work for guys, because what are you doing?
Guys are too much drama.
Yeah, like we gotta, guys, really at the end of the day, and kind of bringing this episode to a close,
Right.
honesty. We have to stop lying to ourselves. We have to stop telling ourselves these things are true when we know that they aren't. We have to realize our subconscious confirmation biases of these things
And
address them.
and think about what's wise and good
And to
God
be
honoring,
selfless.
Be selfless. Yeah.
There's
all
all
those
these things we could name, but at the end of the day, it just comes to being a mature believer and acting the way that the Bible commands you to act. And in those relationships, that is with the sincerity and the seriousness that relationships are supposed to be acted upon with.
And not putting yourself in temptation.
Yeah.
Because the Bible speaks plenty on that. And I don't know. Sounds like you're walking into temptation when you're going out alone and doing that stuff. So
yeah, you just got to be wise and really ask the people in your life that care about you, that are maybe older than you looking in, like maybe a parent or, you know, something, to really get you a objective, you know, opinion on this situation. And
right.
really just be as thoughtful as possible when it comes to this, and don't shortchange yourself of the answer either. I think when you're on social media and you're listening to music and you're watching movies that kind of push all these ideals that these things are okay, I think you really have to ask yourself why.
Right.
And
like I
it.
said, don't be like, oh, I'm just not trusting him. I'm not trusting him because I feel this, like, I feel like he shouldn't be doing this. Like, that's not, like,
that's
dude,
how it's not supposed
do not do that. Like, that's not good. That is not good for anybody.
Right. Yeah. And just as a rule of thumb in a relationship, anytime you're feeling strongly about something, and especially for the jealousy part, it's okay to be jealous over someone that's supposed to be exclusively yours.
He doesn't have a ring, though, you know, so
And-
he's free game. That's not what that means, guys. Not having a ring doesn't mean free game. If you ask someone to specifically be your significant other, you're not free game, or else there would be no title of girlfriend and boyfriend.
Yeah, you can't be halfway into another relationship before you're even out of the first one. Like, that's how people are these days. And it's really sad because there is no commitment. There's no intention. There's no nothing. It's just, like I said, it's just like a social thing, a social media thing, a title thing. People just like to be like, oh yeah, I have a girlfriend, I have a boyfriend. Like, it's not this just flippant thing where you just throw it around because it's a term and it's popular. This is real life, and people need to be taking this stuff seriously.
And you need to be taking it seriously as well as thinking about, even, like I said, stop being so naive to think that everybody has good intentions.
Yeah.
You having good intentions does not speak for everyone. So please keep that in mind, because, dude, especially for girls, I'm sorry. Girls, a lot of the times, are really feisty, and they really don't care if your boyfriend's taken. I'm just going to be honest, because, you know, I've had my fair share of experience.
I mean, I can speak on that too. Most guys don't care either. I mean,
I've heard it. Well, they're not married, so you still have a chance, you know?
Right.
Like,
that's how people see it. And you know, I hope you keep that same energy if you're in a relationship and something's going down for you, because I mean, that's just, it can't be that way. So you really have to, at the end of the day, changing your mindset and focusing on what the Bible says. You know, operating that way.
Being wise.
You know, like I said, keeping your partner in mind, and kind of just bringing this all full circle to when we first started this conversation. You know, it might not be best practice to have a girl or guy best friend, because that's only going to make transferring into a relationship that much harder.
Yeah, and if that person is your best friend, maybe be like, oh, maybe I like that. Like, really think about it and be like, wow, could I date this person? Maybe that's really why I'm best friends with them, is because they are what I want in a partner.
Yeah. And I would say, too, as a guy or a girl, focusing on finding people that are guys and girls that you can confide in and be best friends with.
Right.
Like, you don't want to have to always... Because that dynamic is always going to be different, and I don't care what anyone says. That dynamic is different between a guy and a girl. And, you know, we need to have men that we can confide in about manly struggles, and same with women. Because the struggles we have are more or less the same, but they are different in some instances. And you have to be able to have those people that you can go to that are men and that are women that are going to understand you in the same way.
Definitely.
So I think that's a super important thing to keep in mind.
Friends that you can keep when you get married. That'd be nice.
Oh boy, there's so much more we could say on this, guys, but we're gonna land this plane here. This is definitely the longest episode we've ever done on Bloom with Podcast, so I hope you guys all stayed to the end and enjoyed every bit of the conversation. If you guys want to participate even more in this conversation, hit us up in the comments. Message us directly. We want to engage
here
with
to
you.
the studio.
Come here. We got a seat right here. We got a mic we can plug in for you. This seat is all yours. So don't forget to follow us on Instagram, subscribe for weekly uploads. Again, don't forget to go to bambooearth.com to get yourself some skincare products, and we will see you all on the next episode.